This video is intended purely for scientific and educational purposes only. I am a professional. I have an NVQ and a BTEC. Do not attempt to recreate anything that you see in the video at home. Thank you.
A few years ago, I read an article about the Denver Post cannabis reviewer, Jake Brown, and his experiences about being the first pot critic in America. In it, he said something that really stuck with me. He said that grinding your weed was overrated. And for the life of me, I can't seem to find the article anywhere. I've searched Google, I've searched Bing, I've searched Ask Jeeves, to no avail. I even messaged Jake on Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called now, to see if it was him. And he got back to me and confirmed that it was, and it was in an article in the Cannabis, which, unfortunately, has been shut down since 2018 when everyone was fired and replaced with bots. Yay, the future! Regardless, that comment really stuck with me. I mean, I thought it was essential. Have I been doing it wrong this whole time? I mean, you could spend up to 150 quid on a grinder. So are you wasting your money? Is there even such a thing as the perfect grind? Now, that's a very loaded question, and one I've been pondering on for quite a while now. And like so many seemingly simple questions in life, the answer is anything but straightforward. What do we even mean by perfect? I mean, perfect for taste, perfect for extraction, e.g. getting the most from the plant. Does the size and uniformity of the particles matter? And how do you plan to consume it? I mean, are you going to use a bong? Are you going to vape it? Are you going to roll it up? Maybe you're cooking with it. Does the strain matter? Does the quality matter? And how do you grind it? With a classic grinder? Do the teeth matter? Do you just pick it apart with your hands? Or do you even need to do any of that at all? Hello, I'm Uncle Haggy. Please join me on this journey of discovery, of experimentation, of curiosity, and getting well blazed, fam, innit? As we attempt to discover the perfect grind. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, which is no one, as you can tell from my extravagant set. So if you like the video, just like and subscribe. Cheers. Firstly, I think we should explore why people grind their weed. Unfortunately, I can't speak for everyone, so I'll explain my reasons for why I grind my weed, and more importantly, the theory behind why I think it's a better idea than not doing so. The main reason why I grind my weed is I like to roll a joint, or 2, or maybe 3, possibly even 4. Who's counting? But I think everyone watching will probably understand that you can't just put unbroken nugs into a joint and roll it up and expect it to burn well, or even burn at all, or even be able to even roll it up in the first place. And you can obviously pick apart your nug even further, so you could get that sort of, ease of use for when you want to roll a joint. But, that takes bloody forever. And it gets your hands all sticky and you're trying to roll it up and, it just doesn't work very well. And say you're outdoors and you've been taking all this extra time trying to pick apart the bud to get it all perfect, and a gust of wind comes along, blows it out of your hands, and now it's all over the bloody floor. Rip zoot. But you'll be thanking your lucky stars, because at the end of the day, smoking is bad for you. No matter what you're smoking, weed, wood, I don't know why you'll be smoking wood, tobacco, it all contains things like tar and carbon monoxide and all these other horrible things that you really don't want to be consuming, especially if you're a medical user. So that's why I have this, my Ariza Extreme Q. What makes it so extreme, I don't know. Dry herb vaporizer. If you didn't know, a dry herb vape has a heating element inside. So that means you can extract all the good stuff from it, the cannabinoids, the terpenes, the flavonoids, without combusting it and turning it into smoke. Now, when I use it, I always grind up my weed. That's just how I've always done it. I have weed to use, I'll grind it. And my theory is that if you grind, well, almost anything, you increase the surface area of that thing. So if you want to extract something from it, it therefore should be easier to do so. Think about grated cheese. When you break apart cheese and make it smaller and increase that surface area, you can taste that cheese more. Therefore, you can use less of it. And that's why when you're making a sandwich, it's always preferable if you grate your cheese, because you don't use as much. I also think that because of coffee. Now, let me explain. I've been getting into coffee for the last couple of years and watching YouTube coffee videos. And if you know anything about coffee, grind size is incredibly important and depends on how you make your coffee. Some people spend silly money on grinders. Here's one for $6,000 and here's a big stone grinder that costs $50,000 for that. coffee companies have lasers that cost millions of pounds that can determine the uniformity and size of the coffee grind. People have written scientific papers on the matter. It's a really big deal. And since I've got into making a nice coffee at home, I've started to realize that weed and coffee actually have quite a lot of similarities in the way that you can consume it in lots of different ways. And no matter how I consume my bud, whether I'm vaping or hitting a bong or rolling it up, I like all three. I use the same metal grinder that I've been using for years that does the exact same job, and I don't really think a lot about it. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of information about this online. I mean, there's a few forum posts and websites that contradict one another. All I wanted was just a YouTube video where someone goes through it, runs an experiment, just like the ones that I watch on coffee, to see whether, well, does it matter to grind up your weed? Can you grind it up too fine? Can you leave it too coarse? I want to know. And I hope you do too. I think it's also worth mentioning that when I read this article about Jake all of those years ago, I seem to remember that he was filling up a pipe. So I can kind of see where he's coming from because, well, in theory, if you fill up a pipe or a bong with an unbroken nug, apply enough heat and evenly enough, you should be still able to burn everything and get everything from it. But anyway, so where do we even begin? I mean, I didn't have a very big budget to, hire doctors, do blood samples, some real sciencey stuff. So I needed to come up with an experiment that I could run at home and without breaking the bank too much. Step 1, breaking the bank by buying loads of bloody sieves. Also known as garden riddles. But riddle me this. Why did I buy such a massive hooner? Look how big this is. But it's rather cool because look, you can twist it here and it changes size. That's good. And it's cheap. And I'm cheap. Still, spent over 100 quid on all of them. Probably closer to 150 actually. I'm not going to look. Out of sight, out of mind. But I digress. These sieves will help us separate the weed into different particle sizes in a process called classifying. And the different sizes I've got are 1ml, a 2ml, a 3ml, 4ml, 5ml, 6ml, 8ml, and a 10ml. So using all the sieves, we can get 9 different sizes. But I also will be testing a whole nug unbroken. For the bigger sizes, I'm going to be hand picking them, and for the smaller sizes, we're going to be using a grinder. So the sizes that I will pick are, well, a whole nug, so I won't be picking that, an over 10ml, 8 to 10ml, and a 6 to 8ml. Then, using a grinder, I will get 5 to 6ml, 4 to 5ml, 3 to 4ml, 2 to 3ml, 1 to 2ml, and sub 1mm. That gives us 10 uniformed grind sizes that are within 1 or 2ml of one another to really find out whether size and if it matters. And ladies, I hope it doesn't. So what grinder will I use to achieve these smaller grind sizes? Well, I'll be using this, which is the classic, the iconic, the #1 shark tooth acrylic plastic grinder. So why did I choose it? It's a super common grinder, well, at least here in the UK and Europe it is. But not just the brand, but also the type of grinder. So the fact that it's made out of acrylic and it's got shark teeth. And secondly, I thought it just gave me that little bit more control to be able to achieve these different grind sizes. So I think it's quite a good grinder to start off with. So how are we going to compare all these different grind sizes? My original plan was I was going to get some, alright but not massively expensive weed, classify it using the sieves, weigh 1 gram of each grind size using these milligram scales, which are accurate within 1,000th of a gram, place it in the glass bowl, lightly tap it and shake it to level things out, and then pop it onto the heating element. Then I'll attach it to this really rather sexy little flask, to the glass elbow using this tubing. Seal the top of the flask with some cling film and a rubber band, heat the bud from 160 degrees to 210 degrees for 1.5 minutes at each 10-degree step, or 320 to 410 Fahrenheit in 18-degree increments with the fan at full power, which is roughly about the time to just about fill one of my bags up at home, and collect the vapor into the flask. Hopefully I could then cool that down with an ice tray or something like that and collect some rosin. This would allow me to weigh the flask after each grind size to find out how much stuff from the plant is actually getting to you and down your lug hole control, and I will repeat the test 3 times. This way I could time the test perfectly and do it in one sitting, so I can eliminate any variables such as temperature or humidity or whatever. I wanted to do it like this because I didn't think that vaping 10 grams of weed in one sitting would be a very good idea for running a scientific experiment. And the only other option was I would spend 250 pounds on just over an ounce and shoot it off into the atmosphere. But when I ran a test run before filming to see whether the experiment would work, it didn't. While the finer sizes fitted into the bowl with no issue, when I tested a whole nug, it was very hard to get in, and that would probably block the airflow. Also, getting a whole unbroken bud to weigh exactly 1 gram on these milligram scales was almost impossible. So I think with some of the larger sizes, I'm going to have to get as close as I can to it and then just add a little bit into it to make it the desired weight. And 2, which was actually a much larger problem, and it was something they didn't cover in my NVQ on retail knowledge, and some of you at home are probably shouting at your screens right now, is air pressure. Turns out the fan in the vape wasn't strong enough to be able to push the vapor into the flask while it was sealed. If you removed the seal, vapor would escape, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of the experiment. I did think about rigging up some sort of water vacuum, you know, like a good old-fashioned bucket bong, or using an air pump to be able to get the vapor in, but with the amount of time I've spent on this video, and also the fact I don't seemingly understand air pressure, we moved to plan B. So instead of measuring what comes out, I'll have to measure what is left. After the experiment, we'll weigh the spent weed, or the AVB, already vaped bud, to see how much we've actually extracted off the plant. Because in theory, if we can sort out the airflow problem, which we easily can by reducing the amount from 1 gram to 800 milligrams, or 0.8 of a gram, the stuff that leaves the plant will still be getting to you, the humble consumer. So what about the vapor itself? Just shoot it off into the atmosphere? As I said, I wasn't going to spend that amount of money and not get high. So what do we do now? Well, enter this. Some CBD flower. For those who are unfamiliar, unlike Delta-9 THC, CBD is actually not intoxicating. Also, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than regular full-fat weed. So while I could just blast it off into the void and not worry too much about it, I could actually sit there, vape the whole amount, and still hopefully run a scientific experiment without ordering a couple of pizzas halfway through. So I went with this, which is some Cannatonic. I bought a little bit before buying a whole ounce, and yeah, it's quite fruity. It's got like a lot of berry aspects to it. So I think I could sit there and vape 8 grams of it in one go and not get too sick of it. And because CBD weed is legal here in the UK, well, like anything, it's actually incredibly complicated, you can get this, which is a certificate of analysis, which shows you the exact cannabinoid content of the CBD weed, which is actually rather handy because most THC weed that I would buy would not have one of these. It lists a total of 21%, which is actually one of the reasons why I bought it, because that's actually quite high compared to other CBD flower out there. Add all the other compounds that it doesn't list, like the terps and the moisture, I reckon we should probably get around 25, maybe 30% off it. And for anyone who's thinking, well, CBD and THC are different compounds, this won't be translatable. Well, THC has a boiling point of 157 degrees, while CBD ranges from about 160 to 170 according to sources online. And we're going from 160 to 210, so I think this will give us meaningful results regardless. And if the video does well, we can test some regular THC weed in future. So the experiment will run pretty much the same as before, but instead of filling the flask, we're going to fill the bag that comes with the vape instead, or we can just shoot it off into the atmosphere, depends how I feel. That does mean I'm going to have to change the timings ever so slightly to actually allow me to be able to inhale the bag if I wanted to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it a minute to give me time to inhale the bag. I'm going to have to do it quickly, and then after 60 seconds we'll put the bag back on, and then we can go from there. This is to ensure that each particle size gets the exact same treatment, therefore hopefully making the experiment more controlled. And once we're done, we can weigh everything up, and then we can actually see whether A, spending all this money on sieves was a good idea, and B, if there is a desired grind size. Now, in most experiments, you should have some sort of hypothesis, or more simply, an educated guess of what you think is going to happen in the result. And as someone who spent way too much time thinking about this, here's mine. I think that the bigger sizes and the whole nug will probably give us the least yield. And then once we start grinding that weed and increasing that surface area, we should probably see a little bit more being extracted off it. But when we get to the finer sizes, so the sub 1 mil, the 1 to 2 mil, I suspect that we might see either diminishing results or actually a drop off. I think this because of, again, coffee. You see, when you grind your beans too fine when making certain types of coffee via percolation, e.g. when you pass the water through a bed of coffee, you get what is known as channeling. This is where the water finds the path of least resistance through the bed of coffee, over-extracting some areas and you'll under-extract others. So in the vape setup, I can imagine the air doing the same thing as it passes through the bed of flour. Another theory I saw when researching this, and one that Jake even mentioned when I asked him on Twitter, was that if you grind your weed, you can damage the triclones. Basically, that's where all the good stuff is stored. It will be very interesting to see whether I'll be able to pick that up in the taste at all. But that's coming up in part 2 of this video, and if it's anything like this video has been to make, I'll see you in 2029. Now, I will be really interested to see what you think will happen in this experiment. So pause the video, go and leave a comment. Don't delete it if you're wrong, because I really want to see what other people think about this, because I don't know, I'm weird. For each grind size, I will be cleaning out the bowl with isopropyl alcohol and replacing the gauze at the bottom of the bowl and the top of the elbow. When classifying the different sizes, I'm going to do it all in one go. But I've got these little pots, so I can hopefully keep it as fresh as possible before I can actually get to the testing, because obviously I can only test one at a time. So the first test, we're going to go from the smallest size and work our way up. The second test, we'll go from the biggest size and work our way down. And then for the third test, we'll randomize the sizes, just so that should keep it a bit more controlled. Before we test each grind size, I will reset the temperature back down to 160 from 210 and leave the vape for 10 minutes just so it can cool back down. Also, when I do a new test, I will leave the vape on for 10 minutes before starting. And normally, when you're using a vape, you would actually stir the weed halfway through. That way you can actually get more from it. But we won't be doing that with this experiment, because I found that when you do stir it and it's been heated for a little while, it gets very brittle and breaks apart, and therefore that will mess with the results. Right, I think we've got everything covered now, but unfortunately it is 11 o'clock at night. I have been filming for maybe about 10 hours. I'm not very good at this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a fancy transition and we're going to jump into the future. Right. Right. Turns out I'm not very good at editing, but it's been a few days since I filmed that. I probably have time to do 2 experiments today, because they're going to take about 3 hours each to do. So I'll do the third one tomorrow. I'll film a bit of this one, just so you can see how I'm doing it and see the results live, I suppose. Yeah, well, let's bloody do it. Where's the vape? Oh, and 2 extra things that I need to tell you. I will be freshly grinding for each experiment, just so there's no loss in any moisture or potency or whatever. And I will be picking the sizes first, so the larger sizes first, and then working my way down, because, you know, you can always make something smaller, but you can't always make something bigger. Didn't rip it enough. So I'm trying to sort out the whole nug now, and I'm trying to find a nug that is got minimal stalk in it, if any at all, because obviously that would mess with the results. Cool, we've got one that's at 741, so we're just going to have to add a little bit onto that, because as I said before, it's incredibly difficult to get bang on 800 milligrams. There we go, let's add a little bit more. No, that's gone way over. This is going to be fun. I've just done it with the whole nug. I've put 2 little small extra bits in it, but it is 800 milligrams and it's mostly a whole nug. So there. Now time to use the sieves. So this is how I'm going to do it. I've got the largest one on top, followed by, so the 10mm, 8mm and the 6mm, and I'll just gently shake it like that, just so anything can fall through. Obviously this size is over 10mm, but I don't want it to be massively over 10mm for each nug. So like the whole nug, I have to add a little bit just to make this 800 milligrams exactly, and hopefully that's it. No, it's over 800, 804. So it took me 10 minutes, but we got there and we got the second one down. Oh yeah, how did you spend your weekend? Oh, I spent it sieving fucking weed. You think you got it, and then it goes just off by a couple, and then you pick the smallest amount up and it weighs loads. What's going on? We got there. This is, I didn't think this would be the hardest part of the experiment. Right, I'm done with the handpicked sizes, so now we're going to have to go for the grinded sizes. So this is going to be quite strange to do. That's 5, that's 4, that's 3, that's 2 and 1. Yeah, maybe I should have got all the same size sieve, but here we are. And that needs to go on top. So I'm going to start off very coarsely, so just like a quarter of a twist. So we shake, shake, shake. Right, we got the 5 to 6. Right, that is 4 to 5 down. Didn't film the last few ones just because this is actually taking a really long time. God, I'm making such a mess here. I really hope the police don't just bust down the door. No, officer, I swear it's only CBD. And we're done. Thank the Lord. This has taken 45 minutes or so to do. I did turn the vape on, so we've got another 2 minutes for that to heat up. And then we can begin. Right, I think we're finally ready to start this experiment. This is taking so much longer than I thought it would, and I'm getting really hot and bothered, but hey ho, we're just gonna have to crack on. I would love to have a camera over here so you could see what I'm doing, but unfortunately, because I'm using my phone to connect to that camera over there, if I close the app, the camera stops working. This also presented another small problem because I was going to use this phone as a timer. But luckily, I have my very old, very cracked screen iPhone 8, which still works, and I'm going to use that as the timer instead. Without further ado, let's start this bloody thing. So I've got the timer set up here, and we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, didn't time it perfectly, but we started. A little bit underwhelming. Okay, so it's been on for a minute now. And I am getting so hot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lap and turn that off. I did that pretty good. I don't know why I'm rushing with the vaping. Oh, bloody hell. It's only CBD. So I'll pop that back on now, and I will do the temperature now. So hopefully when I start again, it will be at temperature. And next we're going to do 170. Right, bag back on. Okay, and off on 180. One thing I'm noticing about these bags quickly is that it doesn't seem to be filling up as much as when I did my test with my grinder beforehand. So I wonder if it's getting stuck in the gauze or if there's going to be channeling in there. Right, bag back on. I'm going to do 190. Right, on to 200. There we go. Now we're on to 210. The last one. 3, 2, 1. It's quite hard to turn it off exactly on the time, but oh, one extra thing to mention, I will be keeping the bowl on the vape for a minute after the 210, just so that way it has the exact amount of time on each temperature setting. Okay, it's been a minute, so I'll reset this just so it can go on 160. Let me make sure it's cooled down. See, yeah, I mean, I don't think you'll be able to see from here. The gauze is actually quite blocked up. So that would explain why we possibly had some problems filling up the bag. And clean out the gauze a little bit. Make sure everything is out there. And the moment of truth, our first result. 5, 6, 8. I don't know if that's good or not. Okay, it's been 10 minutes, so we're gonna stick that back on there. And we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1. Okay, no, we're not. Let's try that again. 3, 2, 1. Yes, worked that time. Okay, so we're back on, and I'm not going to go through every single temperature again. I'll only come back if I've noticed anything else like I did with the sub 1 mil and the bag not filling up as quick. Though I think that might be happening here too, but I'll come back and confirm that in a bit if so. Unfortunately, my memory card ran out of space halfway through that test. Filming and doing an experiment at the same time is actually proving to be a real pain in the ass. But we're done with the 1 to 2. The bags weren't filling as quickly again. And that's because I don't know if you can see there, if I can zoom in, that the gauze was getting stuck with particles again. 555, which is actually slightly better than the sub 1 mil, only by 13 milligrams. So would you really notice that? I really doubt it, but I don't know what that means yet, because we obviously, these are the first 2 results. So we'll crack on with the 2 to 3. So one thing quickly to say about the 2 to 3 mil, the first bag wasn't as creamy, or well, wasn't as dense, let's say, as the first 2. So that's quite interesting. Right, so we're at 180 and the bags are getting more creamy, but they're still not filling up as quickly as when I do them at home. Okay, so we're done with the 2 to 3 now. And again, we're getting a lot of particles stuck in the gauze at the top up there. So that will explain why at these finer sizes, the bag doesn't fill up as much. But we'll weigh it and we'll see, well, we'll see how much it weighs, because that's the whole bloody point of this, isn't it? And we've got it at 565, so 565, which is actually 10 more than the 1 to 2 mil, but only 3 less than the sub 1 mil. We're ready to do the 3 to 4 now. If I notice anything, I'll come back, but if not, we'll come back at the end of it and I'll see you at the weigh-in. The bags are filling up a lot quicker at this grind size compared to the other ones that we tested. Right, so that was the 3 to 4. And we're showing 560. That's what it's settled on. Oh, 561 now. And it's staying there. Okay, so 561, but still incredibly similar to the other results we've had so far. Right, onto the 4 to 5. My battery on my camera ran out halfway through that test, so I couldn't sort that out again. But here we are at the end of the 4 to 5. At the halfway point, and I thought I'd just quickly mention that while CBD weed doesn't have intoxicating effects, it definitely has some sort of effect. I'm feeling quite light on my feet almost. I feel quite energized in a weird way, and I've still got 4 more grams of it, so we'll see what happens at the end of that. So just weighed it up now, letting it settle a little bit, and it's saying 562, which again, it's very similar to all the other ones. I don't think there's much more than 15 milligrams in between all the results so far. We're on to the last of the grinded sizes now. So this is 5 to 6. $566. I'm actually really surprised by this because there really hasn't been a lot of changes in the results at all. I know we've grinded these ones up, so maybe when we get to the handpicked sizes, we might see a difference there. But if you grind your weed coarse or you grind your weed really fine, there doesn't seem to be that much of a difference in my vape setup anyway, apart from the fact that with the finer sizes, it might clog up the gauze and take a little bit longer to fill the bag. So I've just put in the 6 to 8 mil and it's a little bit more difficult to get it sitting in there and shake it about and tap, but it just about fits. So as you can see right now, the bag is full. It's only 115. And we're going to have to keep it on for 130, but it's very surprising how much quicker the bags fill up. Again, with these larger sizes, I find that the first bag that you do isn't very dense at all. It's actually very airy. And there goes the 6 to 8. So we've got the moment of truth here for the first hand-picked size. It's not coming out. And it's saying 580. Okay, so we are actually seeing a little bit less extraction here. So the sub 1 mil was 568 and this one is 12 more. I really don't think you're going to be noticing that. So the next one is 8 to 10, like the 6 to 8. I've just got to ever so slightly tap it in with my finger there. My camera died again halfway through the 8 to 10 mil, but we're here at the end. And I've just weighed it up and it's saying 590. So we are starting to see ever so slightly less extraction. Before this moment, I was actually kind of getting worried that I would just be completely wrong with my hypothesis. But we've still got 2 more sizes to go. Maybe I will be wrong, maybe I'll be right. But we're closing to the end of the experiment, which thank God this is taking so long. So like all the other bigger sizes, the bag actually fills up before the allotted time, but we're just going to have to let it run. And again, not really a lot coming off it at first. 595. So again, we are actually increasing a little bit. We're at the last one now, the whole nug and a little bit extra. And this is the last one. Hurrah! And we're done. Oh, yes. I'm so happy we're done. So I've just put the whole nug onto the scales, and this one is reading 622 milligrams, which is quite a big jump from the other ones, but not as big as I thought it was going to be before doing the experiment. I mean, I didn't know what we were going to get, but I thought there was going to be, you know, a big variance in between all of these different sizes. I mean, with the grinded sizes and the picked sizes, there is a little bit of a jump, and then obviously the nug is the worst one. But we have 2 more experiments to go. I was going to do another one tonight. Like everything in this video, it's taken way longer than expected, so I'm going to go home and go to bed. I have time tomorrow to do them. I also don't think that vaping 8 grams of CBD weed in one sitting is a great idea. I mean, as I say, I don't feel intoxicated, but I don't feel normal. My throat is rather scratchy, I'm very tired, I'm still very floaty, which is something. But anyway, I'm going to do another fancy transition, like all the kids do on TikTok, and then when we come back, we will have all the results. Bye.
3 things is all I did to change my life. 3 things. Month of Fury! 30 days! No repeat! No refinement! Sure, that's 2 things that we talked about. Number 3? Oh, number 3.
Bullets.
Most people.
Did that work?
You're not gonna like it.
Did I do it?
This is easy so far. You can give this up for 30 days.
I've cut too early, we'll go back to the studio, for God's sake. So I have fully recovered from my CBD overdose and some serious dehydration. I don't know why I thought filming on one of the hottest days of the year was a good idea. Also, I didn't expect this video to be so long. So if you're still here, then God bless. Thank you so much. I will try and keep this as short as possible. But all this extra time actually gave me the opportunity to completely contradict what I just said, as I didn't end up doing 2 more experiments. I actually did 8 in total. They weren't all full experiments, but we'll get to that. First, here are the results from that test. As expected, the handpicked sizes performed the worst, with the nug being the lowest and the 1 to 2 mil size, the second smallest, being the best. And while we do have quite a linear drop in extraction with the handpicked sizes in terms of ranking, the ground sizes were just all over the place. But like I said in the experiment, the variations were really quite minor. If you took the worst performing ground size, the sub 1 mil, and take that against the best one, which is the 1 to 2, the difference was only 13 milligrams or 1.652%. If we take the 1 to 2 mil and put that against the worst performing one, the whole nug, we have a lot more of a noticeable difference of 62 milligrams or 8.375%. But take the second worst performing handpicked size, the plus 10 mil, and that drops to 40 milligrams or only 5%. Then take the best handpicked size, the 6 to 8 mil, and that drops to 25 milligrams or 3.125%. And if you compare the 6 to 8 mil against the worst performing ground size, the sub 1 mil, that drops to just 12 milligrams or 1.5%. Now, would you notice that? I mean, at 3 to 5%, yeah, possibly. But 1.5%? If you went to the pub and you got a pint and it was 1.5% less than usual, or you had 2 apples and one was smaller by 1.5%, or you're getting high and you're 1.5% less high. But this is just the first one, so we'll go through the next 2 experiments so we can put them together and we can get a better picture of what's going on. So here are the results from the second test, and do you notice anything odd here? Yeah, that's right, the whole nug actually performed the best out of the bunch, followed by the winner of the last round, the 1 to 2 mil, by the slimmest of margins at 5 milligrams or just over 0.5%. But what on earth? Now that's a really big jump from the previous day's results. That's like 62 milligrams of difference or just under 8%. So what happened here? Well, to be honest, I don't actually know. Maybe I didn't weigh it up correctly at first, but more than likely I must have dropped some at a various point where either I was putting it in or I was taking it out to weigh it at the end. I did have quite a good look to see whether there were any AWOL dusty nugs lying around, but unfortunately I couldn't find any, so I just had to carry on. There were some other odd results too. All the ground sizes perform at least the same or worse than they did in the first test, with the 4 to 5 mil size being one of the weakest, coming in at 8th place. And you have 2 of the handpicked sizes being a lot more comparable to some of the grounded sizes than in the first test, with the 6 to 8 mil being better than the 4 to 5 by only 1 milligram or a measly 0.125%. And when looking at the percentages for all of them, a lot of the margins were much closer than in the first test, making them even less noticeable. So here's the results for the third test, and as you can see, the results were quite similar to the first test, with the handpicked sizes being ranked the worst and in a linear order. But the difference between the handpicked sizes and the ground sizes are actually a lot more noticeable this time, with a 28 milligram jump from the worst performing ground size, the 5 to 6, to the best performing handpicked size, the 6 to 8, compared to a 12 milligram jump in the first test. But again, if we look at the percentages, the differences between the 5 to 6 mil and the 6 to 8 mil size was quite small at a mere 3.25%. But the gap between the nug and the best size, which is the 1 to 2, again, is a rather big 10.625%, the largest of the entire test. So my original plan was done, and now we can get all the results, put them together to get an average, and we can get this graph. As you can see, all the grinder sizes are incredibly close. 3 of them are actually identical, coming in at 568 milligrams. The 1 to 2 mil came out as the winner, but by a fraction, beating the others only by about 6 milligrams, or just over 1/10%. And the variance between the best performing ground size and the worst performing ground size is only 10 milligrams, or 1.25%. And while all the handpicked sizes did perform worse, the differences between the picked and the ground sizes was again really not that big. The biggest margin was between the whole nug and the 1 to 2 mil size, and that was 6.125%. Though if we take the outlier of the second test, that goes up to 9.25%. And the differences between the best handpicked size, the 6 to 8 mil, and the 1 to 2 mil was only 3.375%. Compare the 6 to 8 mil to the weakest grounded size, the 4 to 5 mil, and that drops to just 2.125%. Maybe you would notice that, but it's a way smaller number than I thought it would be. And you might be wondering if I noticed it when vaping the bags. As I briefly mentioned in the experiment, the finer sizes were creamy from the get-go and the bigger sizes weren't. But what I didn't mention was that the bigger sizes actually got creamier as the temperatures got higher, while the smaller sizes got less dense as we brought up the temperature. So it wasn't that easy to tell when doing the experiment, except in the case of the whole nug where I really did notice it. I also wanted to show you this graph with all the results from the first 3 tests but separated, as I think it brings up a very important aspect for when you're using a vape. As you can see, we've got some rather big variations between some of the experiments, and I think this shows that how you pack the bowl might be more important for extraction levels than the grind sizes. I did my very best to make the contents of the bowl as uniform as I could, but there is no way that you can replicate how it sits in the bowl from test to test. So now I think it would be prudent to explain the concept of statistical significance. You see, when you're conducting a proper scientific experiment or a research paper or anything like that, you need to have a large enough sample size to determine whether the results you have are actually down to real effects or just chance. And that's why when you see political polls in a newspaper, the sample size tends to be around about 1,000 people, because that's the magic number, even though political polls are wrong a lot of the time, so maybe they need to change that. But I'm not a statistician, nor a mathematician. I'm not a scientist, and hey, I'm not even a YouTuber, but here I am, trying to do all 4. But I didn't just want to end the video by saying, so what did we all learn here today, everyone? Well, it turns out, bugger all. Thank you very much, see you later. So with the limited resources that I had, I decided I was going to run a few more experiments, just because the results weren't as conclusive as I wanted them to be. Not that doing these extra tests will then make it a proper scientific experiment, of course, but I still wanted to run them anyway. I had just over 3 grams left of the original cannatonic that I used for the other experiments, which means I could have done 3 different sizes at 800 milligrams, or I could reduce the starting amount to 500 milligrams and I can test 6. For this smaller scale experiment, I chose the sizes of the whole nug, the plus 10 mil and the 6 to 8, and then I grounded up a 4 to 5, a 2 to 3 and a 1 to 2 mil, and here are the results of that. The handpicked sizes performed worse than the ground ones once again, and the nug came in last again, and the best one this time was the 2 to 3 mil. Again though, when we're looking at the percentages, we're really not talking significant amounts here, with the difference between the best handpicked size and the worst grounded size being only 3%. And even though we changed the starting amount so we can't directly compare these results to the first 3 tests, as we changed a pretty big variable, the levels of extraction were actually very similar to the first 3 tests. I thought that reducing the starting amount we could see higher levels of extraction as there would be more room in the bowl, but we didn't see that here. So now I'm completely out of the cannatonic, but I did have some other much cheaper, much worse quality CBD flower lying around, and I wanted to see whether if I changed the starting material, whether that would give us different results at all. I ran the experiment exactly like the first 3 experiments, but again I reduced the amount from 800 milligrams to 500 500 milligrams because I didn't have a lot of flour lying around. And here are the results of that. So we have a very similar set of results here, with the whole bud being the worst and the ground sizes performing better than the hand-picked ones. But again, with very, very small margins. Surprisingly, the size that consistently did the best, or close to the best, in the cannatonic experiments, the 1 to 2 mil, ranked pretty low on this one. We also see that we had less extraction across the board, but this was due to the bud most likely having a lower total cannabinoid content than the cannatonic that we used. And we saw the smallest margin between the best hand-picked size, which like many of the other tests was the 6 to 8 millimeter, and the worst ground size, the sub 1 millimeter, which interestingly has ranked pretty low on most of the other experiments, meaning the clogging issue might actually affect the extraction too, the difference being 3 milligrams or 0.6%. But there was one last thing I wanted to test. You see, in all the results so far, barring the second test, the hand-picked sizes always did worse than the grounded sizes, and most of the time in a linear fashion. So I wanted to run a smaller scale experiment where I had the same size, but one would be ground and one would be hand-picked, and then we can test them against one another just to see whether the grinder actually has an effect or not. I chose the 5 to 6 mil size, and I ran the experiment 3 times, and again I used the reducing amount of 500 milligrams, but here are the results of that. So this is where I was actually quite shocked to see that the hand-picked samples again performed worse than the ground ones. Not by a massive amount. The smallest difference was 12 milligrams and the largest 23 milligrams, or between 1.6 and 4.2%. Or when you get an average of the 3 results, between 17 milligrams or 3.4%. But I really thought we would see a much closer set of results, with a hand-picked size maybe winning a round or 2, but they consistently did worse, and by quite a big margin when you compare them to the other tests that we had. Of course, let's not forget statistical significance here. I would have to repeat the test hundreds of times to find out if that's truly the case, but it's definitely an aspect of this I would like to investigate further. But I do have a theory as to why this is, and it could just be down to my technique of picking. So when I use a grinder, you would put the nug in and then you put the other half of the grinder on, and that gets right into the middle of the flower, and that's exposing an area that hasn't been as oxidized as much as the outside of the bud. When I pick my weed, and I think a lot of people probably do the same thing, is that you get the nug and then you work your way in, you know, just taking off small bits like that. But let's go back to the beginning of this video and to Jake's original statement and ask a question. Is grinding your weed overrated? With my vape setup, with the CBD flower that I use, with the grinder that I have, and the way that I picked apart the weed with my hands, yes and no. We did get more extraction across the board when we used the grinder compared to picking apart the weed with our hands. But in a lot of cases, the margins were so small, you wouldn't notice it, or at least I don't think you would anyway. Yeah, obviously putting a whole nug into the bowl isn't a good idea, but if you don't have a grinder and you break it apart enough with your hands, you can still get pretty good levels of extraction. When you take the best hand-picked size and put it against even the best grinded size, the differences between all the results were about 2 or 5%. And what really surprised me was, no matter how coarse or how fine you grind your weed with a grinder, the results were so similar, I would put them in the margin of error. And while we did see, when I did the same size but one hand-picked and one grinded, the picked size did do worse. But again, the differences were so small, I don't know if it was worth it. For speed and convenience, then yeah, 100% I really do think it is. And if you want to get the absolute most bang for your buck in terms of extraction, then yeah, all the results did show that. So while I was kind of right with my hypothesis, I really did think that we would see a bigger difference in the numbers. We went from a whole nug all the way down to sub 1 millimeter, which by the way is very fine, and that was actually quite hard to achieve that size. I've never really seen weed ground up that much before. So is grinding essential, like I said at the beginning of the video? I don't think that it is anymore, but we've only just scratched the surface of this deep iceberg of a topic. What about an equally as important aspect of cannabis culture, the taste? Well, in part 2, join me for that, where we'll go through the whole thing again, and hopefully there won't be as many numbers and it won't be such a pain in the ass. What did you think of the experiment? Did the results shock you, or were they quite in line with what you expected? Did I miss anything? Is there anything you would want to see in future, any sort of experiments or any aspects of grinding that you would want to see now I've got all these sieves? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking us out. If you could do all the YouTube stuff, like it, subscribe, comment, share, all of that stuff, that would be fantastic. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I've been Uncle Haggy. Take it easy. See you next time.